Let's Uncommon Fossil Day, talking about Pokemon TCG Live and the amount of games that have been played in the first year of it coming out of beta, and that number in comparison to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and Magic the Gathering Arena. The origination of these for this video is from an article on Pokebeach.com. I'll provide a link to that article as well as to the other two web pages where I got data that I'm going to be talking about here. But so with the Summer Bash, Pokemon said that during the first year of Live, coming after it was out of beta, there's 60 million games were played. What is an impressive sounding number, but it really pales in comparison to the other two major TCGs. Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, that came out about a couple years earlier, so that just keep that in mind. That's not a big difference, so it's pretty close time-wise. There were 2.1 billion player versus player duels played, so 2.1 billion games played there compared to 60 billion of the Pokemon TCG. In the PokeBeach article, they say that's less than 3% of the games played. Another way to look at it is Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel had 30 times more games played in its first year than Pokemon Live did. So that's a big discrepancy there. The other big game is Magic the Gathering Arena. The only data I got for that was back when it came out of open beta. That's the data I could find. This is going back to 2018, 2019. So the numbers should be a little smaller, just assuming population growth and as things grow over time. But even that Magic the Gathering Arena had a lot more games played. So in the first, let me get the thing here. So in the first weekend of Magic the Gathering Arena being open beta, there are 17 million games played. 17 million games played the first weekend compared to 60 million in Live. So that's, obviously 17 million smaller, but not a lot smaller. So for the first weekend, that's kind of scary how much more popular it was. And then Magic the Gathering Arena hit 100 billion games within a month. So they surpassed Live within the first month. So that's a big deal. And they give the first 8 months of data, and they're at 800 million plays. Had a pretty steady growth line there, growth rate. So projecting it out, the first year of Magic the Gathering Arena's open beta, they probably played about 1.5 billion games played. So 1.5 billion for Magic the Gathering Arena, 2.1 billion for Yu-Gi-Oh! The Magic the Gathering Arena was several years earlier, and it was in beta. So that might make that number a little smaller than it would have been for comparison reasons. But they're pretty close together anyway, and they dwarf the 60 million for Pokemon TCG Live. So 25 times more game played in Arena the first year, 35 more games played in Yu-Gi-Oh! The first year. Now, a couple factors to keep in mind. How accurate is this data? That I don't fully know. And the other thing is, how long do these games take? How long does each game take to be played? Pokemon games, I think, do run longer, certainly than Yu-Gi-Oh! For sure. And I think that Arena, too, from my experience, a lot of games are longer in Pokemon. So therefore, you would get less games even if people are playing about the same amount of time, the same amount of players playing the same amount of time. If each game's longer, you get less games played. But then, of course, you get quick concessions. That happens in Pokemon, happens in these other games as well. So it's hard to know. But probably Pokemon, games take a little longer on average, I would think. The other piece of data that I took a look at, and I made a spreadsheet to make sure I got the numbers right, was how many games are played per minute. And I just took that on average based upon knowing how many games per year, divided by 365 for days in a year, dividing it by 24 hours in a day, dividing it by 60 minutes in an hour. And I come up with just about 4,000 games per minute in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. I believe it's primarily a one-format game. So 4,000 games being played per minute. So you shouldn't have to wait long to find an opponent, and also find an opponent of an appropriate skill level, which is a good thing. Magic the Gathering Arena obviously has a few less players, so it is about 2,850 games per minute. So 2,850 games per minute. Now that has a lot of formats, so therefore, because all the formats, less played formats you may have to wait a little bit for the more major formats, especially like Standard or Alchemy, you should find an appropriate opponent paired pretty quickly. When I was doing the new player experience, where there were some little niche things I had to play in that were less common, sometimes I had problems finding opponents. but generally not an issue there. Now, for Pokemon TCG Live, we have 114 games per minute. So that's a lot less than the 4 or 3,000 games per minute for these other games. So 114 games per minute. That's enough games that you will find an opponent generally without too long a time period. That you will get probably a bigger skill level differential within that. Within it, but you'll find someone for sure. There are, I don't know, what are there, 2 primary formats? They're both standard, but standard rank, standard casual. There's the expanded beta, which I do sometimes, and I see some play, but I think that's a lot smaller. So a lot of it's split between two main things. So enough players that generally matchmaking should be fine. Obviously, with all these games, I just assumed even distribution of gameplay over all the different time zones and such across the spread. So obviously there's population clusters. So if you're in a less populated time zone in general, you will have more issues for sure with live. Now, in terms of Pokemon's, the plus side here, in terms of card sales, Pokemon dwarfs the other games in terms of actual card sales, and that's where the TCG makes its money for sure. In fact, when we talk about Pokemon TCG Live, right, a couple things to keep in mind. Live is not actually run by the big company, the Pokemon Company, right? The Pokemon Company is the global, runs the global brand, and there are all these different things that are out. TPCI is regional. North America and much of the world, but not Japan and not some other regions are not part of it. And then TPCI also has, I believe, the TCG, I think the anime for the regions it controls, and the stores. It has all those things for the regions it controls. It doesn't have any involvement, I don't think, with the video game, with Go, with Pocket, which is coming out. So its data, its money is much smaller. It doesn't have the same level of control over the game like Yu-Gi-Oh does. That's one global company, one global game. MTG Arena, a global company, a global game. Live is unfortunately not global, and I do think we pay a bit of a price. And then Live, and Pokemon makes no money from Live. That's something to keep in mind. These other games are monetized, perhaps too much so, and that's always a debatable question. How are they monetized, and how does it impact the situation for players? But one thing that's, I think, become apparent, very clear and apparent, is that Pokemon does not have any incentive to put additional resources into Live to make it actually a good game, right? The progress on just getting bugs worked out in Live is very slow, and to actually get Live to be a better game than PTCGO, which that was the hope when it was announced, right? That seems very far off if it ever happens. I'm actually at the point where I'm not sure Live will ever be better than PTCGO because Pokemon just hasn't shown the interest in investing the resources and the money, that is what that means, into developing, getting a team of developers and designers is big enough and with enough experience to actually get the job done properly. So that's one issue, right? Will it ever change the monetization? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think Live's ever going to monetize, but it might. We don't know. Another thing to keep in mind is Pocket is coming, right? Pokemon TCG Pocket's coming sometime this calendar year, I believe. And that will be done by the big company, the Pokemon Company. They make Go, they make the video games. I mean, different segments within it still, but it is by the big company with the big resources. So Pocket will be a well-polished game. I think it's going to be very popular when it comes out. I do think that the player base in Live is going to take a hit at first. I'm a little concerned about that, I got to say. If we have a little over 100 games per minute now, I think we might be down to 50 games per minute or so, and it may get to be matchmaking, may get tricky. Hopefully not too bad. Time will tell. Now, it is possible with Pocket that Live grows over time, right? If new players come to Pocket, which will be, Pocket will, I think, largely get people not playing the TCG, but obviously TCG players and Live players are going to try out Pocket as well. Hopefully these new non-TCG players will play Pocket and then want to play the full TCG and start playing Live. That's the goal, but I am pretty certain to me that the player base for Live is going to take a hit at first. Hopefully it bounces back and even gets bigger over time. I am concerned, though, if I'm not playing Live and I play Pocket as my first time playing a Pokemon TCG game, that Live just is still all buggy like it is now, and if there's not a lot of users and matchmaking's not good, I think I might just walk, I'll try live once or twice and probably not go back to it. So hopefully, for live to grow, it also has to get bigger too. It's never going to grow unless it becomes a better experience than it is. So that's the situation. Just looking at the numbers, it is a bit depressing for me that live is so small. There's enough players right now to find matchmaking. I think it's kind of at still, based on these numbers, it's at a point where if it drops off too much, matchmaking could become a problem. And that's a concern I've had in the past, still do. I love the Pokemon TCG. It's a lot of fun. I like playing the game. I love deck building. It's really great. And I really want to see the online client flourish. PTCGO, the old client, was okay, but it needed to be redone. There's no doubt that live was necessary. The problem is right now, live has been bad. So hopefully Pokemon, the Pokemon Company International, gets things together, puts the resources in, and we get the game that we all want and deserve in Pokemon TCG Live. So good luck. Hopefully things get better in the future for us, and have some fun playing the Pokemon TCG. Take care.